By the spring of 1944, there was one question consuming the entire German high command, from Hitler's bunker to Field Marshal Rommel's headquarters in northern France. Where are they going to land? Everyone knew the invasion was coming. The buildup of men, material, and aircraft across England was visible from the French coast on a clear day. The only question that mattered, was which of two possible landing sites the Allies would choose. Option 1, Pas-de-Calais, the narrowest point of the English Channel, a 21-mile crossing, the fastest route to Germany's industrial heartland, the obvious choice, the logical choice, and the most heavily fortified stretch of coastline in human history. The German 15th Army, 19 divisions strong, approximately 150,000 men, waited there in prepared defensive positions. Option 2, Normandy, a longer crossing, a less obvious beach, lighter defenses, the less logical choice, guarded by the German 7th Army. If the Allies chose Calais and the Germans were ready, catastrophe, thousands dead in the water before they reached the shore, the invasion repulsed, the war prolonged by years. If the Allies chose Normandy and kept the 15th Army at Calais, everything changes. The Allies chose Normandy, and then they needed the 15th Army to stay at Calais, not just before D-Day, but after it. The solution they found didn't fire a single bullet. It was a man's name. To understand why George Patton was the perfect weapon, you need to go back to Sicily in August 1943. Patton was commanding the U.S. 7th Army in the Sicily campaign, and by most objective military measures he was doing brilliantly, advancing faster than anyone had expected, seizing Palermo, putting real pressure on the German and Italian forces. On the battlefield, he was arguably the best Allied commander of the war. Then, on August 3rd, Patton visited an evacuation hospital. He found Private Charles Cool in a hospital bed without visible physical injuries. Cool was suffering from what the Army then called battle fatigue, what we now understand as combat stress reaction. Patton didn't believe in it. He called the soldier a coward and slapped him across the face. 7 days later, at a different hospital, he did it again to Private Paul Bennett. The incidents became public. The reaction in America was divided. Some supported Patton's hard-driving style. Others were horrified. But the institutional damage was done. General Eisenhower, who liked Patton and knew his battlefield value, could not give him the most prominent command in the coming invasion. Patton had become a political liability. He was relieved of command, sent on tours of North Africa and the Mediterranean, Cairo, Tunis, Corsica, Malta, Jerusalem, ostensibly in disgrace, actually to confuse German intelligence about where he might next appear. He arrived in England in January 1944, with no command and no role in the invasion that was going to be the defining moment of the war. He was furious, and he was available. And the Allied deception planners looked at this situation and saw exactly what they needed. The slapping incident, the biggest public embarrassment of Patton's career, had inadvertently made him the most powerful psychological weapon the Allies possessed. Because the Germans were so certain he would lead the invasion, they couldn't accept that he was being used as a decoy. That certainty was the trap. The plan was called Operation Fortitude South, and it required building an army from nothing. The 1st United States Army Group, FUSAG, would be stationed in southeast England, directly across from Pas-de-Calais, the obvious jumping-off point for an invasion of that coast. It would be large enough, loud enough, and real-looking enough to convince German reconnaissance that 150,000 men were preparing to cross the channel there. There were no men, so the Allies built the illusion of them. In the harbors and fields of Kent and Essex, the southeastern corner of England, directly opposite Calais, they constructed 255 dummy landing craft. These were built from steel tubes lashed to buoyant drums and covered with canvas. From the air, from the altitude, a Luftwaffe reconnaissance aircraft would fly. They passed for the real thing. Real vehicles drove tracks in the mud around them to simulate the activity of a working embarkation point. In the fields, inflatable Sherman tanks were set up in formation, rubber replicas that could be deflated and moved in hours, repositioned to show German reconnaissance pilots a constantly changing, active military presence. Wooden aircraft sat on dummy airfields, fake supply dumps, fake camp facilities, fake administrative buildings, an entire infrastructure of military fiction spread across southeast England. But the most sophisticated element wasn't visible at all. Radio traffic. A real army of 150,000 men generates an enormous amount of radio communication, unit-to-unit coordination, logistics requests, personnel movements, weather reports, fuel requests, medical communications. The volume and pattern of that traffic is as identifiable as a fingerprint to skilled radio intelligence operators. German signals intelligence was very good at this kind of analysis. So Allied signals operators, a small number of highly skilled men, generated all of it. They created fictional division-level communications, fictional corps headquarters, fictional supply chains, all of it precisely calibrated to match the pattern a real army of that size would produce. The German signals intelligence units intercepted it, analyzed it, and confirmed. A massive force was building in southeast England. FUSAG existed, as far as German intelligence could determine, beyond any reasonable doubt. All it needed was a commander the Germans would believe in. On January 26, 1944, General George S. Patton arrived in England. He had lost his command in Sicily. He had been publicly humiliated. He had watched his former subordinate, Omar Bradley, be given the command Patton had expected to receive. He was now told his assignment: command the 1st United States Army Group. Patton understood eventually what FUSAG was: an army that didn't exist. His role was to make the Germans believe it did, and he committed to it with the same ferocity he brought to actual combat. He made public appearances throughout southeast England, inspected fake troop formations, gave speeches at women's clubs, attended public events, all of it photographed, all of it fed to German intelligence through Allied-controlled channels. The Luftwaffe reconnaissance pilots who photographed southeast England saw, sometimes, Patton himself, the most dangerous American general, present and active, exactly where a major invasion force should be. At a London hotel one evening, Patton encountered Brigadier General James Gavin in the lobby. They chatted briefly. As Patton left, he turned back and called out, loud enough that anyone in the lobby could hear, "See you in the Pas-de-Calais, Gavin." Whether German intelligence operatives were in that lobby, or whether word simply traveled through the social networks that intelligence services monitored, is unknown. What is documented is that the incident was noted and reported, but the deepest mechanism of Patton as psychological anchor was more subtle than his public appearances. It was the German military's own institutional logic working against them. German intelligence, the Abwehr and the Fremde Heer West, the Foreign Army's West Intelligence Branch, had analyzed the Allied command structure and concluded that Patton was their premier field commander. The Sicily campaign had confirmed it. They were certain that the Allies would not waste Patton on a diversion or a secondary effort. His presence guaranteed the main effort. This belief was so embedded in German military thinking that it functioned as an axiom, an unquestioned premise that shaped how every other piece of intelligence was interpreted. Reports that suggested the invasion might be at Normandy were explained away. Normandy was probably a feint designed to draw attention. The real invasion, with Patton commanding, was still coming at Calais. Eisenhower had understood this. The deception planners had understood this. You didn't need to convince the Germans of a specific lie. You just needed to give them a fact, patent at FUSAG, that their own logic would turn into the conclusion you wanted. The trap was the Germans' own certainty. Patton was simply the bait. 2 weeks before D-Day, the Allied deception planners took an extraordinary gamble. General Hans Kramer had commanded the Afrika Korps, Rommel's legendary armored force in North Africa. He had been captured when the German and Italian forces in North Africa surrendered in May 1943. He had spent nearly a year as a prisoner of war, and by May 1944 he was in poor health, suffering from severe asthma. The British agreed to repatriate him, to send him home to Germany through a neutral country. Before he left, they gave him a farewell dinner. His host for the evening was General George S. Patton. In his role as commander of FUSAG, Patton played the part of a slightly indiscreet senior officer, dropping references to the Pas-de-Calais, mentioning unit movements, allowing bits of apparently sensitive information to slip into the conversation. Other Allied officers present did the same. Then Kramer was put in a car for the journey to his departure point, and as he was driven through England, he looked out the window at what appeared to be massive military buildup, troops, vehicles, equipment, the organized chaos of an imminent major military operation. He was told he was in Kent and Sussex, the southeast of England, directly opposite Calais, FUSAG territory. He was actually being driven through southwest England. What he was seeing was the real invasion force, the actual troops, preparing for the actual Normandy landing. The road signs he passed had been replaced with fake ones. His guards made casual references to place names that put him in the southeast. The deception was so complete that Kramer never questioned it. He was shipped to neutral Sweden and flew immediately to visit his old commander, Field Marshal Rommel, in France. It's coming in the Pas-de-Calais. Kramer had been captured in Africa, held for a year, repatriated in ill health, and used, without his knowledge or consent, as the most credible possible source of intelligence the Germans could receive. A general officer who had personally seen the invasion preparations, who had dined with Patton himself, who had no conceivable reason to lie. He was the final piece of the Fortitude architecture, a living, breathing, senior German officer who who would walk into Rommel's headquarters and tell him, from personal observation, that the invasion was coming at Calais. Rommel believed him. At 6:30 in the morning on June 6, 1944, Allied troops began landing on 5 beaches in Normandy. Within hours, the largest amphibious operation in history was underway, and German commanders along the entire coast of northern France were receiving frantic reports of a massive invasion. At Pas-de-Calais, the German 15th Army did not move. Field Marshal von Rundstedt, the German supreme commander in the west, requested that Hitler release 2 panzer divisions to counterattack the Normandy beachhead. Hitler refused. He was convinced Normandy was a diversion. Patton and Fusag were still at Calais. The real blow was still coming. The German 15th Army, 19 divisions, approximately 150,000 men, remained in their prepared positions at Pas-de-Calais, waiting for an invasion that would never come, while Allied soldiers were fighting and dying 20 miles away on the beaches of Normandy. But the most remarkable moment of the entire operation came that evening. Juan Pujol Garcia, a Spaniard who had approached British intelligence in 1941 and become their most valuable double agent, known to the Germans as Arabelle and to the British as Garbo, sent a radio message to his German handlers in Madrid. The message had been carefully crafted by Allied deception planners. Garbo told his handlers that Normandy was exactly what it appeared to be, a large-scale operation, but a diversionary one, designed to draw German reserves away from the Pas-de-Calais, so that when the main blow came, with Fusag and Patton, the defenses would be weakened. The German High Command read Garbo's message. They trusted Garbo. He had been providing reliable intelligence for years, all of it, unknown to them, carefully crafted Allied disinformation. They found his analysis compelling. Hitler personally ordered the 15th Army to maintain its positions at Calais. The order held for 7 weeks. Hitler had originally hoped the Allies might be kept at Calais for 2 weeks. 7 was beyond anything anyone had imagined possible. For 7 weeks, as Allied forces fought to expand the Normandy beachhead, as the most critical phase of the European campaign was decided on the hedgerow-covered ground of northern France, the best-positioned German army in France sat at Pas-de-Calais and waited. They were waiting for Patton. Patton was not coming. He never had been. Military historians have spent 80 years debating exactly how much difference Operation Fortitude made. The debate is, in a sense, unanswerable. You cannot run a controlled experiment on D-Day, but the numbers are stark. On June 6, 1944, the German 7th Army, defending Normandy, had approximately 12 divisions available to resist the Allied landings. The German 15th Army at Calais had 19 divisions, nearly 150,000 men, that did not move for the critical opening weeks of the campaign. The Allied planners had estimated, before D-Day, that if the German 15th Army reinforced Normandy in the first 48 to 72 hours, the probability of a successful lodgment on the beaches dropped dramatically. The mathematics of amphibious operations at that scale, with the equipment available, against a well-organized defense, reinforced by a second army, produced projections that kept American and British generals awake at night. Fortitude gave the Allies those 48 hours, and then another week, and then 7 weeks. Operation Fortitude was not the only reason D-Day succeeded. The bravery of the men who crossed those beaches, the years of training, the air superiority achieved over France, the logistical miracle of supplying an invasion across the Channel, all of it contributed. But Fortitude was the operation that shaped the strategic conditions in which all of that bravery and preparation could succeed. George Patton never commanded a single real soldier in the D-Day operation. He gave no orders that moved troops. He directed no fires. He planned no assaults. And his name, his reputation, his record, the fear of him that lived inside German military planning, held more enemy soldiers in place than any division in the Allied order of battle. Winston Churchill said that in wartime, truth is so precious it must be attended by a bodyguard of lies. Operation Fortitude was that bodyguard, and George Patton, humiliated and sidelined for slapping a soldier in a hospital tent in Sicily, became the most effective weapon the Allies deployed on the most important day of the 20th century. Not by fighting, by existing, by being, simply and terrifyingly, George Patton in the wrong place at the right time. The most powerful weapon the Allies had in 1944 wasn't a tank or a bomber. It was a general's reputation and the certainty of an enemy who was too smart to see the obvious. Subscribe if you want more of the operations that decided history before the first shot was fired. We publish one deep dive every week. Like this video, if Patton's strangest victory deserves to be remembered. See you in the next classified file.